All right, welcome to part 2 of this episode of Social Distillation. Speaking of distillation, have you done anything with the stuff we made last time, or is it still brewing?
It's still brewing. It hasn't settled yet, so I'm not confident, but it smells like it's actually doing something. So,
That's good.
yeah.
That's good. Because that first batch, the peach was awesome, and then the blackberry was something wasn't right.
The blackberry smells good. But the peach doesn't smell as good, but I remember the first batch I ever did smelled like vomit, but then came out amazing when it went through the process that we don't do and officially and it was yeah, it came out really good. So it was I guess it was just so strong in the original form that it smelled so bad. But then once you put it through the other process that we're not allowed to talk about, uh, it uh, it comes out really good.
All
Uh,
right,
theoretically,
theoretically.
theoretically, if someone who has a license to do so does it, it's all about the taxes too. They just want your
Stupid
money.
government.
They just want your money. Uh,
That's what the Dukes of Hazzard was all about, was the revenue man.
no. So what I wanted to talk about today, speaking of Texas politics, is something that popped up for me,
Oh no.
and we've talked a lot about slippery slopes on both sides, and this might not be a problem for you, but this is something that has happened or has happened. Well, no, I don't know if it's been signed by the governor yet, but it has gone through the Senate. Here is the actual bill because I don't just listen to headlines. And the headline is absolutely correct. They are going to require schools to display the 10 Commandments in the state of Texas. I told you it's the extreme pendulum swing. This is why we have to check our own sides.
Well, except I could only wish it was an extreme pendulum swing because we've gotten so insane on the other side. This is just optics. This is nothing. This is
It is
pandering.
but it is forcing schools to include a specific religion. And the 10 Commandments to me is very important in this. It's not religious values, it's not religious ethics. It's the first lines of the 10 Commandments. They are specific to the religion. If it was commandments, let's see, one, two, three, four. If it was commandments 5 through 10, okay, that's those are good messages. Don't steal, don't kill. I mean, you shouldn't be preaching to children not to commit adultery because they shouldn't even know what that is if we teach them, if we follow the principles we've been talking about already, but
That
whatever.
was the whole point of the "Don't Say Gay," which wasn't "Don't Say Gay" bill. Is
Yeah, yeah.
is you don't need to be talking to elementary schoolers about that stuff yet. Um,
But
I
yeah, if we were teaching the parts of Christian values that were pro-social, fine. And if you were even to require that, that's fine because pro-sociality is something we should be teaching children. But to specifically have a religious doctrine placed on display that, again, the first few of them are specific, then I don't know. This is problematic to me because this is breaching the church state separation, which I know isn't official. I know it was only in letters, but at the same time, it was considered important by the founding fathers.
well, okay, but no. Here's since you brought that up, I wonder if I can find that real quick. Here's what's important about the church and state letter that Jefferson wrote is that not only is it not official, as in there are way too many people who think that's actually what the First Amendment says, which it doesn't. It's also completely backwards. What what Jefferson was saying to the Danbury Baptist Church was that there is a separation, a wall of separation between church and state to protect the church from the state, not the state from the church. So that's point one. Uh, Point two, I don't have a problem with, as you say, uh, the I think it's nonsense in elementary school because you should be talking about other things. There's more basic things to talk about, but
Well, I mean, you can do some of them in a lesser way, like Jimmy
in
stole Jane's pencil off her desk, and Jane
well,
is
but
crying. You can give a lesson in "Thou shalt not
there
steal."
there are
There,
history and social studies courses and whatnot where they talk about religions all the time, especially if it's if it's non-white and non-Christian. Here, let's talk about Islam. Let's talk about Buddhism and Taoism. And yeah, we can't really talk about Christianity though, because that's verboten. That's stupid. My problem, well, as you say, the first thing that jumps out at me is the require. I don't like that in general,
well, I don't like
but
that. We talk about federal versus state, but now we're also talking state versus districts.
yeah.
We're talking about local government. If my school board that people in my district elected don't want to do this,
Hmm.
that really should. I mean, this is
And
no
if the school board
crisis. This
doesn't
is
want to
no
do it, but the
emergency.
people
Yeah.
do, then they'll vote them out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So this should be a bottom up thing.
There should be a bottom up thing. So if it was I was really hoping the headline was just lefty stupidness and that it
No,
wasn't
it
actually
was this
that.
this one was actually in
Um,
in
yeah, I
the
was hoping it was an allow, not a require. But
mhm.
that's not even my biggest problem with it.
No,
My
I brought up
biggest,
a bunch of allows because I thought you would go down that route with
hmm
some of the like the Kennedy
hmm
prayer case and stuff, because those are legit. The headlines are wrong on those, and we can go through those. I got up like 4 or 5 examples of those. Those are fine because it's like it's of course all in legalese, but it's on their spare time, in their non-instructional time, in their what would be personal communications, even with students. They can do that. It's all voluntary, but they even specifically say in those laws, and let me bring up one. I think the easiest one to read was the Idaho. Make sure I have that one right. No, that's not Idaho. Where's Idaho? Yeah, here we go. So even in the one that's being touted as, oh, they're going too far, which is, again, I'm being fair here. They didn't go too far here because in section 3, it specifically states that it allows this by the First Amendment, but it cannot be used to coerce
hmm
or basically, for those that don't know, the Kennedy coach was the guy who prayed after a football game and lost his job. And that went up to the Supreme Court, and they deemed that unconstitutional because he was just praying under his own volition. And this is just codifying into law that you can't do that. You can't fire this guy for that,
hmm
especially because everything was voluntary. But what it says in the actual bill is, say he garnered out playing time to the people who prayed with him versus people who didn't, well, that would be a
hmm
grounds for dismissal. That would be a grounds for suit. So you can't use it as a coercive method. You can't use it as a part of your curriculum unless you are in a theological studies class. You can't use it to determine grades. You can't use it to determine who gets on what panels. Now, there was one that was a little ambiguous because they could facilitate student run religious organizations. And when you talk about something like community service and volunteer hours, if teachers preferentially do those things, then you can end up with a skewed demographic there. But other than that, yeah, if it's just free time, I was reading these and I'm like, that's like I met another teacher for pizza at the what was the one in Stillwater?
Hideaway.
The Hideaway, and we talked about religion or church or something. Apparently, people wanted that to be illegal, and they're just codifying in a law that would be legal. So those are complete bunk. But the Texas commandment one, it is requiring schools to do this at the state level in a state that's probably the most diverse state in the country.
Meanwhile, in Minneapolis, Minneapolis City Council unanimously agreed Thursday to amend the city's noise ordinance, which had prevented dawn and late evening calls at certain times of the year due to noise restrictions. The vote came during the Muslim Holy Month of Ramadan, blah, blah, blah. Nation found, blah, 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 blah. Okay. So this is why this bill is so infuriating to me, because it's not, it's picking a fight that doesn't need to be picked in a way that it shouldn't be fought, and at a time when there are other more important things to be talked about. Because no, we should be having to your point, let's be fair and evaluate these things as they are and be sensible, and talk about things like this of, well, wait a minute, you're going to persecute Christians in Colorado because they won't bake a cake, but no, we'll just have the Muslim call to prayer over loudspeakers in a major metropolitan area in the United States, and that's totally fine. Okay, we should have conversations like that, but that's not the conversation this bill is going to spark, one. And two, hey, remember that time the governor of Texas declared an emergency because there was an invasion on the border and then did two things about it, Jack and shit, and Jack left town?
Okay, so let me make a note here because I don't want to derail the current conversation, but I have a thought on that. Immigrant.
The call to prayer one, or okay.
No, the immigrant, the border crisis.
But so in order to make political hay, because he was being challenged in the primary, although I think he did this after the primary, after the election, whatever. He declared an emergency. That the Constitution allows for this. He declared an invasion. That gives him authority to do things. He did nothing. And the speculation by some, and I can't remember who I heard say this, was that the speculation was that the reason he didn't do it earlier, when there were a lot of calls for it, especially when there was the video of tens of thousands, at the border getting ready to try and cross, was that he was concerned that if he declared an invasion and then had Texas state troopers, acting on that they would be susceptible to federal suit and federal law, because we know what, the current administration thinks about that. All
Well,
right.
and we who's the AG at Allen West? Adam
Texas, or
Texas, yeah.
is it Ken Paxton, or is he the lieutenant governor? I can't remember.
He's the lieutenant governor.
Oh, brain fart.
One of West, something West. Allen, I think it's Allen West.
No, Allen West is like the GOP head of Texas. No, it is Ken Paxton. Who the heck is the lieutenant governor? Yeah, it's Ken Paxton.
Okay, so for what I've seen with the way they did the lawsuits during COVID and stuff, he's pretty in tune with the federal with what the feds will do and can
Dan Patrick's
do.
The lieutenant governor.
Okay. Yeah, okay, that's right. Yeah, yeah. It started with a P. It's all the same. We know our local politics. We're just old and senile. But he seemed to be pretty on point with when to strike and when not to strike. And I guarantee he probably said we're going to lose this one. Because they've been pretty in lockstep.
Well, and I was annoyed that our wussy weasel politician governor wasn't doing it earlier, but then when he but that, like I said, I can't remember. I think it may have been whoever was the Arizona AG at the time. But when he then did it, I thought, well, okay, I guess they've got this all figured out. They've got their ducks in a row. They're ready for any potential lawsuits and federal action. And then nothing happened. So that's going on. So far as I know, the emergency powers granted to the governor, or I don't even think they were granted, that the governor assumed during the COVID lockdowns, so far as I know, those have not been challenged or repealed. So we still got that to deal with. So far as I know, Texas National Guards members are still being uh, dishonorably or other than honorably discharged if they refuse to take the jab. What the hell is the governor doing about that? The governor is the commander in chief of the Texas National Guard. He can assert his authority there. So far as I know, he still has not. But no, let's pass this bill because it's red meat for our base.
Mm-hmm.
You people
Well, and we
suck.
saw it right in the middle of COVID. They, I know you agree with it more, but we can also probably agree on the timing of it. That was the main issue, was the Texas abortion bill. The main issue during all this COVID crap was to push this other agenda to
And
pander to his base.
it wasn't just the timing, it was the weaselly nature of it. The reason the Mississippi bill was successful and 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 was a good bill to challenge uh Casey versus Planned Parenthood and Roe v. Wade was because it didn't dither around. It didn't try and play cutesy politics. It went directly at the issue. It said what I asked when we first had our abortion debate. I said the only question that matters that should be being asked, and the Mississippi law asked this by making its case. It made it to where the court had to address this. When does life begin, and why? That's the only thing we ever should have been talking about. But because the Weasley politicians wanted the issue and the fundraising, they always just tinkered around the edges. Oh, we'll pass a partial birth abortion ban. Oh, we'll try and pass parental notification laws. Ask the question that matters. Address the issue that matters. Stop playing politics, you pathetic weasels.
So one thing I wanted to do for a future episode, and I'll just maybe tease it now, or it might be settled now because it might not be enough subject matter. I know your opinions of Abbott, and I'm a little bit more forgiving of him with the COVID policies. It's a really difficult thing because he's a representative of the people, right? And the criticism of him was he put the sails out and see where the wind was going before he made a decision.
Mm-hmm.
And then the bolstering of someone like DeSantis was that he just made decisions and did his thing. But we've been following these things, especially from inside the state of Texas, since it started. And I'm pretty damn sure that Texas opened faster than Florida. And it's not a bad thing that the person in charge wants to see what the people want. And my current criticism of DeSantis is he's trying to pass policies now with his new mandate that are really not popular with his constituents, because he's probably wanting to jump ship for a presidential run, or he doesn't care that this might be his last.
Well, here's where I disagree is
I don't, that's why I say I
yeah.
didn't have time to do all the research. I want to get the timelines. The problem is
Okay.
when you try to research that, all you get is news articles about how horrible Texas and Florida were, and it's like, no, I want the actual numbers. When did Texas open schools? When did Florida open schools? What were the numbers? Because I know the actual COVID case and death numbers. Texas is like 38th in the nation per capita. Yeah, you take the absolute numbers, they're second because they're the second biggest population, but per capita, they're like 38th on both cases and deaths. Because, well, we did a pretty damn good job. And the zero COVID policy, as we see in China now, doesn't work. But
so I just had a thought to pull us back to what started all this ranting is, so here's an example, because we do try and not just rant, but whether we're talking fitness or social stuff or, relationships, we do try and give kind of practical examples and ideas for where you could, take hold of the issue and do something productive. here would be an example of actually doing something productive with a bill like this, is rather than simply saying, we will require that all schools put the Ten Commandments in the classroom. Instead, pass a bill making part of the curriculum of history classes to
World
connect.
religions.
No,
Oh,
more
you're talking about
specific than that.
connecting the Christian evolution in Western society to the Republic of the United States.
Yes,
Yeah.
is the connection, the influence of Christian ideology and Judeo-Christian
And even
laws
more
and
specifically,
principles.
probably the works of Burke, who was the biggest influence of Jefferson and all of those.
If you
Yeah.
want to try and reinsert some of the theology and morality that used to be taught in schools, then do that. Make as part of the curriculum that you connect the Christian uh, uh, theology uh, that was happening in the colonies, because they touch on it in some curriculum when they talk about the Great Awakening, which was a big religious movement that happened early, I want to say like the 1820s, 1830s. But if you want to go deeper, then make that connection and say, for this reason, that if what you're trying to address is a fundamental failure in cultural ethics and morality, then you need to go back to the beginning, Vicini. You go back to the beginning and say, here is why the Declaration said what it said. Here's why the Constitution was structured the way it was structured. And here's why it worked and why it mattered. I can't remember. I believe it was Adams who wrote that the American system of government was structured for a moral people and would not work without it. And I think it was Tocqueville who said, America is great because Americans are good.
Yeah, de Tocqueville, he's an interesting character. I think he throws in the face a lot, throws back into the face of a lot of conservatism because he was very progressive for his day and age.
But he's also very useful because he's an outside observer.
Yeah. But he was also, like you said, grounded in what seemed to be virtuous. He was a very good judge of virtuosity in people. It didn't mean he was always right, but he seemed to at least understand why this is good, even though it's not what I am. So yeah, I might reread his which one is it?
Was it Observations on America or something?
Yeah,
like
Observations on America. That's what I have. But yeah, he's an interesting guy. It's a really tough read because English wasn't his first language. But
yeah, so you're dealing with a translation from French, which there's going to be some idioms there.
In a day and age where you didn't have a really standardized dictionary. Have you ever read the Lewis and Clark
yes.
journal? They spell mosquito probably 15 different ways. And apparently mosquitoes were very bad on that trip because they talk about it a lot. Okay, so now here's an interesting, whoops, I did something wrong. What did I do? Okay, here's one I wanted to show you and get your opinion on because I have a secondary thought on it. So this is from the Kentucky bill on allowing religious thoughts in the school. And for the most part, it's exactly like the Idaho one I said. I mean, you're praying in private. People are willingly doing this. You're not allowed to discriminate or anything. But the one I have highlighted here, F, decorate your desk and other personal spaces with personal items that reflect your religious beliefs to the same extent that other employees are permitted to decorate their desk and other personal spaces with personal items.
And I imagine part
of draw a line there, or
well, no, I like the way it's phrased because
it's phrased broadly is my problem. Because is there a line within that statement? I agree. Like if I want to put my rosary on my desk, or something along those lines. And it's phrased in a way that Islam, someone who's Islamic faith, can put a Quran on their desk or something with their faith. If they're Buddhist, they can have a little whatever. But is there a line there?
Um,
And where is that line?
Not that I can think of off the top of my head, because my first thought was this is I'll bet this is why that bill exists, is because you have instances, some of them recorded, because yay, why do teenagers have cell phones? I don't know, but they do, where kids have been told they need to change their shirt because it had a Christian message on it, and that was offensive to some of the students.
Mm-hmm. Which I
Me,
agree that should not be done.
Meanwhile, you have places where teachers openly display the pride flag, the
Mm-hmm.
rainbow flag, and the trans flag,
Well, and this
and
is where
give
I
them
was
out
going
to
with
their
that.
students.
And this is where I was going with that. Now, don't you think that it might open the door if, Mrs. Smith can have her cross and rosary on her desk? Mr. Mrs. Whatever can have his pride flag.
The shop teacher, did you see the video of the shop teacher that looks like he's got balloons in his chest?
Yeah, and that one went back and forth on whether it was satire and this
Yeah.
person was doing it on purpose, but it turns out it was legit. This or I still haven't got a final answer on it, but the last answer I saw was it was actually legit. This person really did wanted to be this way. Yeah. I thought it was better as a joke, but yeah, so if you allow A, do you have to allow B?
but that's why I even though I don't like what could result from it because of what you've just talked about, because my preference would be something like the parental rights bill in Florida, which says we shouldn't be talking about this crap in elementary school. On the other hand, I do find it amusing because what you're going to do is you're going to kind of force the LGBTQ plus rainbow mafia to basically admit that what they are espousing are religious views, that they are acting like religious zealots. So, and to your point about the stupid Texas bill is you put it up to the local district, is to the extent that employees are allowed. That's why I like that phrasing, because if the local district,
I don't think rights are necessarily there. I think requirements from the top down should be nixed, but you have the freedom to do this. That could be a more universal thing.
This is theoretically, but the courts can do whatever they want, and they always do. This is theoretically preempting the court because the legislature, the people's representatives, have spoken. And so the court cannot interfere because there's a law in the books. So if a school district says, we don't want any of this, this place is just for learning, teachers, you don't display any political, ideological, religious iconography, you focus on teaching. Okay, well, that means the students have to follow those same rules. But if you're going to allow Mr. Mrs. with his giant balloon knockers to display the Rainbow Mafia flag, then I get to walk in every day with a t-shirt with a Bible verse on it, to wear a shirt with, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's my main point, is not only is it about what should be in schools and what shouldn't, but it's about the fairness.
Mhm.
And we have had a one-sided thing one way, but I really feel with this Texas bill, you're seeing at least the beginnings of trying to, well, you did this, so we're going to do this. And I hate the pendulum swing effect, because if we look at the right versus left, not in a linear line, but in that horseshoe, well, these two almost connect up at the top. And we need to keep it swinging back and forth down here. But what we've had over the last couple of years, and realistically, oh, who was I watching the other day? They said their background was they lived in Cuba and they were very old. They lived in Cuba during a right-wing authoritarian rule and a left-wing authoritarian rule, and they were different, but they were both horrible. And And I'd hate this swing to keep going until just whichever one happens to be on top during the peak of it
Uh,
takes over.
yeah. Ted Cruz's dad, Rafael Cruz, has talked about that because he's old enough that not only was he alive under the Bautista regime, but he fought with and I can't remember why, but he fought with a communist guerrilla group against the Bautista regime. And for some reason, I can't remember why, but this is what happens when communists take over, is then they start getting rid of anyone who might even possibly be a threat. So he and his friend were arrested. They were tortured. They were, I think his friend was killed for because communism gonna communism, and
Mhm.
that's why he eventually was able to get out of Cuba. Um, but he's talked about that as well. That well, of course I mean he talks very eloquently and with great Latin passion about how much he hates communism, but of course he was going to side with them in the beginning because they were the ones fighting Bautista, and he was awful too.
Yeah,
He was the awful that Raphael knew.
and remember in 1930s Germany, since everybody wants to bring up Hitler, the Nazi regime was the swing away from the communist movement.
That passage I read from Defying Hitler, the next few chapters right after that, he goes into the absolute and if you don't know the history, uh, even if you do know the history, it's interesting to read from a firsthand perspective of just how awful and chaotic those first 4 or 5 years after the end of World War I were in Germany, how violent it was, and the swings back and forth between the different groups and the different parties.
Well, and remember, I mean, even go a little further back with Mussolini. The difference between Mussolini pre-World War I and Mussolini post-World War I was workers of the world unite versus Italian workers unite. That's the only difference.
Yeah, that was it.
That was it. He just added a nationalistic bend to the exact same thing.
Mhm.
And that's not a damning statement about nationalism, because I think nationalism has its place, especially in a diverse place like the United States, where we need to overcome white, black, Hispanic, Muslim, Catholic, Protestant, and all this mixing pot of things. We need a national identity to some degree, but that was it. That was the difference. It was workers of the world versus Italian workers, the same people, and all of a sudden they were unified under this one thing, and they took over. The difference between one authoritarian state and another is not very far. It's just who dies at the end is realistically who it is.
Yeah. So my big takeaway though from what we've been ranting about here the past half hour or so is just I like the Kentucky bill more, but just like with the Texas bill, why? It's like the
Well,
anecdote I've related about
the
Glenn Beck
the ones I like, there is a why, because there has been that one-sided discrimination. Like I said, brought up the
yes.
Kennedy coach who was fired because he prayed with some of the players in the field. That is all well and good as long as he doesn't start players preferentially based on this. Now there is, on the other side, again, teachers being able to sponsor these student-run religious organizations, create more opportunities for those students. So there is a little bit there that you have to account for. But other than that, teachers talking to other teachers or students in a private manner over anything, as long as it's not illegal already, like sexual talk and stuff like that, it should be protected under the law, just like any other freedom of speech.
So before we started recording, you brought up when we were trying to get back on track about what is appropriate, and that made me think. I do want to differentiate. I want to point back. We talked about this, and we brought up the bill of why it was a parental rights bill, not a "don't say gay" bill. You morons! Is the whole point of the bill, and I think we both agreed it didn't go far enough for what its purported purpose was, which was that
No, I think
it's
it was a good start.
it was a good start, but I think it was only up to like third grade. I think they've expanded it out, but
Well,
there
yeah,
is a
I
certain
haven't read the expansion bill
there is a
yet.
certain
Yeah.
age at which talking about gender identity and sexual identity is just simply inappropriate. It's it, if I gave, I mean, look, you there's a reason health class comes in like seventh or eighth grade or whenever it is, because all right, well, they kind of need to know about it because they're starting to go through puberty. So
Hmm.
we have to talk about the at least the bare bones of how things work. But it is entirely inappropriate to start foisting that kind of stuff on children. That was the point of the bill, and that's where that was inappropriate, and this is okay. My bigger point though is I don't see how this attacks the issues that matter right now.
In fact, what I was pointing out is it semi facilitates it because you can have soft engineering of that from the wokey left
Mhm.
to include that. It could be, well, you're allowed your crosses and your John 3:16s on your desk. I've got a picture of Colin Kaepernick kneeling on my
I,
desk.
I'm going to teach history while wearing my Shea shirt,
Mm-hmm.
right? Uh,
They actually specifically addressed that in one of the bills. I think it was the Kentucky one, because it says you can wear religious attire as long as it's appropriate with the dress code of the school. So you can address that by having the dress code be shirt and
mhm,
tie.
mhm, mhm.
No t-shirts, no logos, no any of
But
that,
so
which
so
should be the way it is in schools, anyways. But
here's an even better idea because I mentioned the practical idea of here's how the Texas law could have been better and is actually tie it to something that matters in school. But there's an even more fundamental way to address this if you think this is an issue. Why didn't you pass a school choice bill? Give parents greater choice and flexibility in where they send their kids because they're their freaking kids.
you need to watch the interview of James Lindsay by Vivek Ramaswamy, who is an independent candidate for the U.S. presidency.
Is he independent now? I thought he was running for the GOP
No,
nomination.
he's independent. He's self-funded.
Well,
Uh,
yes, but I thought he was
he's an
running for
interesting
the
candidate too.
GOP primary.
We have two interesting protest votes this time around.
Hmm.
Because I call them protest votes because they realistically don't have much of a chance, but they still push agenda, just like Ron
Yeah.
Paul did, even though he only got 3% of the vote. He
Hmm.
still pushed agenda that affected the GOP after that. What was Ralph Nader? He pushed, in fact, he pushed the Democratic Party further left,
Hmm.
but it still shows the power of what a 2 or 3% vote to a third party can have.
Yeah.
So you're making this vote not for the candidate to win, even though that would be kind of freaking cool at some point, but you're making this vote to shift whichever party you normally identify with into the direction that away from the direction that you think they've gone off the deep end.
Hmm.
And Vivek is a very interesting candidate, and Dave Smith's also a very interesting candidate that would actually affect both sides a little bit in the way they think, because they're both semi-liberal, semi-classically liberal, but also have some conservative values. In
Hmm.
Dave Smith, you've got the classical libertarian, where he's culturally liberal, but financially fiscal, or fiscally conservative. And Vivek, you've got definitely the fiscal conservative, the free markets, but he's kind of a little bit all over the place with the cultural stuff. But they have a whole section. The reason I say this is they had a whole section on charter schools and how that doesn't matter right now because of the accrediting associations that accredit these
It
charter schools
it
have
depends on
been
the
taking
state.
over.
It
Yeah.
greatly depends on the state.
And so
Um,
the states that matter where the charter schools would make a difference are overrun.
See, like when, or at least it was this way when we first moved to Joplin, Missouri. I think I've mentioned this before. Yeah, when we were talking about relationship stuff, is that was kind of the dynamic for me and my wife at the time was she'd just gotten this job, it was a real job, but we got to take care of the kids. Our son had fallen behind because his first grade teacher was awful, or second grade, whichever it was. So I homeschooled them since we moved in the middle of the school year so that I could get him caught up to where he should have been in the first place and then finish out that school year. I didn't have to do anything under majority law. I just had to tell him, no, I'm homeschooling him. And then the next year I went in and said, he's ready for this grade. I need to enroll him in this grade. And I did. So I didn't have to do anything. There are other places where you have to jump through so many hoops on purpose because they don't want you to do it, that you have to jump through so many hoops just to do it. And you end up having to teach them the same things anyway, because you have to follow the same state requirements. So that is an issue that would need to be addressed with a school choice bill. But I'm assuming Kentucky is better about, and I know Texas is better about homeschooling and charter schools, that wouldn't be an issue. And so my bigger point here is, instead of getting sucked in with either of these bills saying, yay, go get them, or, oh, that's awful, and getting all outraged, both sides should be stepping back and asking their representatives, how does this help right now? How does this help when a carton of eggs is 4 or 5 times what it was a couple years ago? Gas is double what it was. You know, grocery bills are
I think
freaking outrageous.
I think that's one of my points indirectly, is not only is forcing schools to do something on a religious basis to satisfy your conservative base wrong from a governmental standpoint, even from a structure of government standpoint, but it's on the that base's responsibility to say, no, you're overstepping yourself here because we have all these other problems. Don't do this authoritarian thing when we again, gas prices, like you said, inflation. We're in Texas. What are you doing about oil production? What are you doing to make sure that we're still going to run at the level we're used to running? We're an independent grid. Why are you not pushing back on the woke climate change movement to make your grid?
No, that's a big effing deal too. Luckily, we didn't have the winter we've had the past couple of years. But you mentioned Texas, and it just dawned on me, I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier, is what have you done besides giving speeches and, fundraising? What practical things have you instituted to make sure that the debacle that happened with the Uvalde police never happens again?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So instead of pushing through this thing that's probably really not constitutional to begin with, why aren't you addressing all of these other things? That should be the message. It frustrated me to see that. Not because I'm not religious, but because basically you said it better than I was thinking it before. We're pushing this thing through that is not only not proper to do, but not necessary at the moment. We're the great state of Texas. We should be the best state in the United States of America. We should be competing with California on everything, production value wise, because they're the next most populated state. And those two things, that's for a reason. These states are the most populated states because we had the most going for us. And we're letting Florida take center stage. Florida's the Wang of America.
Florida, America's Wang.
Yeah, America's Wang. Credit Homer Simpson. But yeah, from a production standpoint, from a cultural standpoint, I mean, up until the last few years, you had Texas, New York, California, and Texas was holding its own against 2 of the other 2 most populated states. On the coasts, even we're in the freaking Gulf Coast, and if anybody has ever swam in the Gulf in the middle of August, you know how much that sucks. We got the leftovers going in there to include all the hurricanes, but it's no Texas. I have a Texas flag up there, and people know I don't identify as a person in a lot of ways, but Texas embodies a lot of things that I think are really freaking cool.
Mhm.
And you're wasting that opportunity right now.
Big time.
Big time. Uh, Including the immigrant thing. I made a note to bring that back up. This flood that was coming in that might not have been able to be stopped, instead of just giving speeches, like you said, you know, it would have been pretty freaking awesome. So the scare of that is what? A bunch of voters that are going to vote Democrat are flooding into your states, right? You know what you could have done? We can't stop this because there's too many people coming in. And if we do a military intervention, then the feds are going to come down on us. You get every Catholic organization funded to go in there and take care of these people that are coming in as you're doing the legal things to stop it. You're still doing the legal things to stop it,
Mm-hmm.
but you take care of the people that are coming in a compassionate way, and you make sure they know which party was responsible for that. Abbott, you dropped the ball here. You could have had 2 million new voters for your side of the aisle because culturally they are conservative. But you let them in and you fought them on the way in, and they're going to vote Democrat because that's the party that let them in.
Fought them, but didn't actually stop them, didn't actually
Yeah,
do
exactly.
anything. So you got the worst of both worlds.
You got the worst of both worlds. You could have started setting up shelters, mini churches for them. You could have done taken care of their kids, made sure they had food, COVID protection because the protocols were still around, made them feel safe, and then had the message all the time in there very subliminally, these people let you in with no net. They threw you off a cliff like lemurs for their own political gain. But we love you and we're here for you, and you are human beings.
And there are plenty of charities that do that kind of thing.
Plenty of charities that do that kind of thing, and you could have incentivized those charities to do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And you could have even had the National Guard, the Texas Guard do that. When you were afraid to use them militarily,
mm-hmm.
you could have had them go in as like this giant soup kitchen. And you know what? Those soldiers would have been happy to do it because they have hearts too. And as soon as they saw what they were doing for these people, they would have been ecstatic to give their time for that, their time and effort for that. I would have done it. If you put a call out for volunteers,
But put a call out to say, we need the good people of Texas to come together and help us deal with the humanitarian crisis so that we can deal with the legal crisis, because we have to process these people, and we have to, there were a lot of children, and we need to have the resources to investigate and figure out how many of them, and the sad answer is most of them, are being trafficked.
Yeah,
so we can protect them.
These people are here. We're going to try to make sure that nobody else is taken advantage of. But while we're doing that, we need to take care of the people that are here.
Yes, so that the government resources can go to these things.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, we just all did our taxes, man. Texas doesn't have a state income tax, but we just all did our taxes.
Freaking property
and
taxes.
This would change the system so much because we vote on these leaders. We vote between Trump and Biden. Oh God, right? But if in our taxes we could specify what we want our tax money in order to go to, guess what would not be high on the list? Gender studies to Pakistan. Guess what would be high on the list? Let's find a way to finally fix homeless populations in this country. Let's have even amongst conservatives, let's have a social safety net. Let's fund a badass army that nobody wants to invade. Let's make sure the roads are safe and well maintained. Let's do all of these. Those would be the things at the top of the list, not all the stupid shit we spend money on. And if I was to spend money on something, it would be to take care of these immigrants that we're not going to repel no matter what, anyways. Again, with the long-term plan of creating a system that doesn't encourage these people to come through.
Mhm.
But two things can be true at once. You could try to do that while still take care of the people that are coming through. And
Absolutely.
and if you're worried about Democratic voters, well, you could have just had 2 million. You could have changed the state from purple to red in one foul swoop.
Yeah. Could have. Could have. Woulda, coulda, shoulda. Well, on that cheery note.
It wasn't even on the radar though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm just
Yeah.
putting the idea out there. I'm like, this is the lefty telling you how you could do better while still doing what you want to do.
Yeah. I never heard in any of the punditry I listened to over the years, I never heard an idea even approaching that.
You
Yeah.
still don't. You still don't. You still hear the cries of they're just trying to take over these states with blue voters because they're going to vote this way, and it's like,
No, that is what they're trying to do, and they've said as much.
yeah, but
But
at the same time, they don't
but that
have to
doesn't
vote
mean
this
your
way.
reflex needs to be an exactly opposite reaction.
I'm going to give you a great example. Cuban voters in Florida. They were
Yeah.
brought in for that purpose because you're a minority in the United States, you vote blue. And they did for a long time. But then blue started becoming more, well, we're just going to say red, red and sickle and hammer, that kind of red, and they started seeing it. The problem is it's a little bit more vague if you're coming from Mexico or
Mhm.
Guatemala or something. Guatemala is an interesting kind of situation because it's not as bad as Venezuela, but it's still poverty stricken and it's still corrupt and
Mhm.
it still has all of these issues, but it doesn't have that
Openly Marxist,
openly.
avowedly Marxist.
Yeah, I'm not
That
as
was the
worried about the
difference.
Venezuelan. Come from Venezuela because you know what it's like. Now,
Mhm.
just don't just now see that you're in a place that you can make a difference because your vote counts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I need to make food because I did heavy squats and I deserve food.
All right. Well, this was my day off, but we had a good first 2 days of workout, and I got some stuff tomorrow, and we're gonna try to wheel of time it tomorrow.
Yeah, we're close to the end. We should be able to get it knocked out because we finished the mat and the girls. So we've just got Ran to power through, and that shouldn't take too long.
Yeah,
And
especially
then
since we don't seem to spend as much time on Rand as we do on Matt or Baron.
there's a lot more to talk about.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
especially since so much of the Rand stuff really is a very long setup for the last few books, and I think we're gonna get into some deep dives in those last couple of books when his kind of character arc comes to its culmination. But before that, there's not a lot you can say without getting spoilery.
Yeah, because he just keeps for the next several books, he just keeps getting worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And remember, if you're watching our Wheel of Time, comment on the last Wheel of Time episode and let us know, should we go into Path of Daggers next or should we do New Spring now?
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I need to. We have a lot of comments, and Scott probably had something to say in there. Do we have a timeline on season 2 of
That's a good
Wheel of
question.
Time? I'm looking it up right now.
I saw that there's a Witcher trailer out and it comes out in the summer, so that'll be exciting.
Uh, digital. What the hell? Digital spy for cookies. That doesn't sound good.
Oh no.
Can I just skip over this? Learn more. Decline. Still got the story. Okay. Short is so okay. They're saying it's a definite, and this is a recent article. It was like April 5th. Just tell me when it's gonna be.
Yeah, I'm not seeing a release date yet. Does not have a release date according to this article that was 2 days ago. So it's supposed to be sometime this year, but does not have a release date.
Well, I'm not watching the first season again until I have a release date for the other
Mhm.
one. Uh,
I'm sorry, what?
Uh-oh.
It's already been renewed for a third season, according to this article on comicbook.com.
Oh. It's because of us fools. There's so many internet wannabe stars that are watching it just to give a review of
Ugh.
it that oh.
Well, when I first signed up for Prime, it was a yearly thing, and now you can do it month by month, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to sign up for a month or two, watch the stuff I want to watch, then I'm going to cancel, and I'm going to tell them because too many of your shows are hot, preachy garbage made by people who don't know what the hell they're doing.
Speaking of entertainment, I just thought of
Oh no.
YouTube and NFL. NFL draft is tomorrow. What's your prediction for the first pick of the draft? Carolina Panthers, they're going to take a quarterback. Is it Bryce Young or Stroud?
Everything I've heard says that they want Young, and the rumors I've been hearing about the Texcants is that Young is the only quarterback that they're impressed by.
Mm-hmm.
So if Carolina takes Young, they're going to try and drop down, get some extra picks.
No, they're not going to drop down. They want a defensive edge rusher from Alabama, which the rumor I had before that was they were going to trade up from 12 to 3 so they can have 2-3, and they were going to take either Young they were going to take Young if he was still available, or excuse me, they were going to take the defensive guy at 2 and then take a quarterback at 3, because then you can pay the quarterback less because he's not the second pick, he's the third pick.
Which is what the Browns did with Mayfield. Yeah.
And so that actually might be the most likely scenario if Young is still available, because then they can get Young for a little less.
Yeah, that would
But
have to be a serious rope-a-dope though by Carolina that I doubt.
well, and the more comes out about Stroud is the more he's unimpressive. He I don't know who they did the equivalent on the review, but to me he looks like Byron Leftwich out there, which is, he's good. He's really good. He's NFL quality. He's an NFL quality starter, but he's a statue in the pocket.
Well,
And
well, at least we'll have something to talk about Tuesday that won't be stupid news that makes me mad. Well,
yeah,
no, wait, the Cowboys are picking. So yeah, we'll have some stupid news that'll make me mad on Tuesday.
well, but at the same time, there's still a couple of free agent quarterbacks, because from what I understand, next year's quarterback class is actually better than this year's. So if you don't get Young, who's the obvious choice, I think, if you don't get Young, then you can still pick up like a Jameis Winston or
Speaking of Baker Mayfield, I think did the Rams release him? Or
I don't
I
know.
don't. I think they may have only signed him to a 1 year deal anyway.
If they wanted Baker, they would have got him in that Deshaun trade.
Mm.
But which I wouldn't have hated at that time. They could give Mills another chance, even though he took a step back, but he's got a whole new system now, which is going to be a run first system. D'Amico's bringing Shanahan's offense to him.
Mm.
So it's going to be basically what we had several years ago when we had Kubiak, is going to be a zone running scheme.
That's what I think they should do is look, if you're not sold on anyone else, then don't take a gamble. Take someone worthy of a number 2 pick. And if you don't have a quarterback, give this kid a chance, and maybe he shows you enough that you get some trade value out of him, which will help you get the quarterback you want next year.
Or even, I mean, if someone, between 2 and 12 has a decent backup quarterback, trade, 2 to 7. So they get the 2, you get the 7, and you get their quarterback plus another badass player from the team.
Top 10 pick, yeah.
like a good inside linebacker or a good guard. We need a good guard, something along those. So get 2 good players. This is what the Patriots did for years. They almost never drafted. They would use their draft picks to trade all around and get great players. I remember they got a number 2 defensive end for a third round pick one year. And it was just,
I think they had a dozen picks one year. It was ridiculous.
We have a dozen picks this year.
Because
that's why
so many.
Yeah,
wow, okay.
Yeah, we have a dozen picks. So everybody's like, oh, well, they might trade down to get extra picks. I'm like, you do that when you don't have a dozen picks. We can have a number 2 pick, a number 12 pick, 3 in the second round, I think 4.
Yeah, but if
the
someone's
third round.
desperate enough, you can drop down in the first round and get their first round this year and their first round next year,
Yeah, and if
depending on
someone's
where they're
that
picking.
desperate to get Bryce Young, or not Bryce Young,
Stroud.
Stroud at this point, I don't know. There's a couple. There was another quarterback that apparently the whole San Francisco staff had an inside job on because one of their coaches came from the school he came from. And I can't remember the name of the guy. One of my clients was telling me about it. And they're actually really big on him because of this influence. So they may try to pick him up a little bit later. And there's so many things that could happen. But like I said, there's still 2 good free agents out there that we could pick up for a relatively decent price tag that can get you through a year or two. Jameis Winston and Teddy Bridgewater are both available. They're both starter level quarterbacks that they're not going to break the bank. They're not going to break any records, but they're serviceable. And if you're going to run first, play action offense, perfect. Fine. Why not? We were undefeated at the beginning of the year when we had Tyrod Taylor until he went out with his injury, and then we tanked after that. It's just, what do you got right now? Is it worth that number 1 pick? Maybe you can pick up another number 1 pick the next year from a team that's probably going to be bad and use that for your quarterback. So trade this year for next year. This is the game people that want results now don't understand. But I think you can get results now even if you get 12 picks. If you get 7 good players out of those 12 picks, we're a playoff team next year. That's the way it is, especially in the AFC South.
Well, that's why the draft time is exciting, because it's all speculation. You don't have the disappointment of the actual play.
And you can always draft like I do in fantasy, where I'm always the number 1 draft class in our league, and I always tank at the end of the season. So
everybody always gets hurt.
Which I was second this year. I didn't tank too bad, but I lost to my wife.
Well, could be worse.
Could be worse. At least somebody in this household won. We got a trophy in the house.
Yeah. All right. That's enough rambling. We will see y'all tomorrow for finishing up Crown of Swords, and then next Tuesday we'll see if any of that came true.
We speculated a lot, and we're probably wrong on everything. Unless Bryce Young is available at 2. If he is, well, dagnammit, we got the next Drew Brees.
All right, here's my prediction for everything sucks and I hate everything is the Cowboys are going to trade up to get Bijan Robinson. You heard it here first, folks.
Did I send you that Cowboys that Cowboys meme?
The Gardner Minshew one?
Yeah. So since I don't have it on my computer to share, it was who was it fans of the Parsons?
It was some idiot account had tweeted out that Dak has more 4,000 Micah Parsons fan was the account. Fun fact, Dak Prescott has more 4,000 plus yard passing seasons too than the Eagles do in their entire franchise history. 1. And then somebody tweeted back at him, fun fact, Gardner Minshew has had more snaps in an NFC championship game than Dak's career total.
0. Well, here's another rumor that I've heard that just popped in my mind because I was thinking about passing yards on everything. But one of the rumors is we trade away our 2nd pick for Lamar Jackson. And I say no, please no, because the only reason that happens is because we're willing to give him the contract he wants.
And he wants a Watson, everything guaranteed.
Again, before I get any haters, I wouldn't mind Lamar Jackson as our quarterback. I don't want Lamar Jackson for a $250 million guaranteed contract, which is what he wants, because he wants to be paid more than Deshaun Watson. And we all know how stupid the Browns are. That's why Deshaun Watson's getting paid what he's paid, because it's the Browns.
Yep.
Even Jalen Hurts' contract is only $150 million guaranteed, and the overall contract for 250 is 6 years. It's not a stupid 3-year or 4-year contract. They're keeping this guy for the long haul. That's a decent contract. Lamar Jackson has not proven he could stay on the field all year, and he wants more money than the highest paid quarterback in the league.
Yeah. That makes sense, but that's
Doesn't make
life.
sense. And we would be giving up a premium pick
Oh
plus
yeah.
paying the money.
Yep.
All right. Well, we'll see y'all tomorrow. Anything else before we leave?
Nope. See y'all next time.
All right, later.